Hello everyone, welcome at the World Junior Chess Championship 2022 from Sardinia, Italy. And today we are having round 8 at the event where we have overall 11 rounds in the championship. And we are your commentators, Grandmaster Evgeny Miroshnichenko and woman Grandmaster Keti Tsatsalashvili.
Is there a sleepy grandmaster title? Because that's exactly what I am. Okay, so round 8. Let's talk a little bit what do we have in the tournament tables right now, because interestingly enough, the situation is more or less identical in the open section and girls section, while, well, the number of entries is much lower in the girls section, so it's a little bit less people tied for the 4th place, right? And namely, I believe in the girls it's 6 players with 5 out of 7. In the open it's 12 players with 5 out of 7. But then on the very top it's absolutely identical situation. 5.5, as you can see, nets you a clear 3rd place after 7 rounds. So in the girls tournament it's the top seed, Salimova. And in the open section, it's Velimir Ivic. And then we have 2 leaders in both sections, so Adam Kozak and Nikola Kacharova playing each other, no surprises there, 6 out of 7. And the same goes for the girls. Arselis Bay, I believe she has the white pieces today against Govhar Baydulaeva. Okay, so with 4 rounds to go, I'd be seriously surprised a lot if, let's say, we do not have the name of the winner, potential winner of the tournament, currently, or had rather, on our screen, right? So we had like top 10 players. Well, for the boys, some of them on 5 out of 7 didn't make it to the screen because screen being too small. But yeah. Basically, unless we believe in miracles, I don't really think that someone who has less than 5 points after 7 rounds will win the event. Okay, prove me wrong, someone. With 4.5, just win everything till the end.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, 2 participants of this tournament we see right now on the screen, all the players. 2 of them will be the champions of the tournament, and they will be entitled this new for all of them can be it is the new title, because none of these players have been junior champions before. So just 4 rounds to go, and I cannot wait to dive in the first board of the open section, as we are having both players, Kozak Adam from Hungary and Nikola Kacharova on the screen. And this game is very tough. If any of these players win the match, the player gonna be the sole leader.
Yeah, that's correct. Discussing the position, though, so far makes not a lot of sense. An English opening was played by Adam Kozak. To my shame, I do not recall what he was playing previously. I don't think he was playing English opening, in fact. I think he was going for something a little bit more... Well, it's a little bit more mainstream. Well, English opening, in fact, is more mainstream, but what I mean is he was either d4 or e4. All right, so c4, e5, 4 knights, and e4. Okay, that's not the most critical line. Let me be honest. And for the time being, it's not much to talk here. Well. So bishop to c5. Yeah, I regret I was not in time to mention this. So bishop to c5 is kind of critical after e4, because some people, and I think we had it in this tournament, some people play bishop b4 with the idea to go, yeah, I think white goes d3 no matter what, with the idea to go d6, and later on when this bishop is attacked, you are not trading it, you actually go back to c5. So what's the point of what's the point for black to waste the tempo to go bishop b4 and yeah, give white just an extra move in development? It turns out that bishop c5, which is of course the most desirable, right? So white just created the hole on d4 after e4, and the bishop is nicely placed. Oops, no, that's not how the bishop works. Yeah, on f2, of course. Yeah, but the serious problem is knight takes e5. So knight e5 is, of course, an option, and you really have to know what you're doing here, because otherwise you can easily get in some sort of a trouble. So Kacherava is ready, I believe, since he was the one to choose this bishop c5, and let's see if the pawn on e5 will be taken. Well, the point is, like, if you do not take on e5 here, you accept once again the position which is already considered to be not so bad for black. You accept it with a tempo down, right? So one more time, I mean, quite often they would go bishop b4, d6, and later drop to c5. So now bishop c5 immediately. So knight e5, in a sense, is the only move if white is trying for something. And then, yeah, and then we'll see how, or rather, what's black plan to respond to this. Knight e5, and on its surface, yeah, like if knight takes e5, d4, white wins back a piece, and then
Probably bishop b4, they take c5, and
yeah,
knight
bishop
e4
b4,
to take
yeah,
the central pawn.
That's one thing. There's also bishop f2, but I think in this specific version it doesn't work that well, because white is just on time to play d4 and build a massive center. But I just thought, okay, white captures on e5. How about black castling short? Because people been doing this, right? In other lines, like if you think of pet line of Eric Rosen, which is very popular on internet, which is not correct. Let me be, since I'm getting a platform, let me tell you guys that I mean, Rosen's line doesn't work. Okay, plain and simple. But anyway,
I think
this seems to be
most of our
like
viewers knows that very well, as Eric is a well-known streamer, and also probably we shared the viewers, and they surely know all these kind of funny-looking lines.
yeah, but trying to say that potentially it is, you know, the same gambit kind of improved, because yeah, taking on d6 on c6 looks too much, right? So white is in a very serious danger. I mean, what the pawn's doing on c4? So you won't take, and otherwise you should be looking to play d2, d4, so maybe knight goes back to f3, but then black seems to be just on time to play rook e8, threaten this. If you protect the pawn, well, even knight g4 is an option after d3, knight g4, d4, that doesn't work. But again, anyway, the d3, who knows, maybe d5 is the move.
D4
You know?
has been played, as I can see already on the screen, so we very likely had 95, and d4 on the board.
Okay, so knight takes e5 was played. Black recaptured with the knight and d4, and Kacherava is thinking.
Yeah, out of the curiosity, I checked the games of Adam Kozak, if he has played c4 at this event, and he has played in the first board with white pieces.
In the first round, you mean?
Yeah, first round, c4, but his opponent has not showed up in that in that game, so he actually, in fact, got a plus in the first round, and that's where he played c4, and the game has never continued.
Yeah, so 95, d4. What else can you do? Bishop b4 is the most principled. Bishop d6, I don't think it works in this particular instance, because c5 is there, right? So the second best after bishop b4 would be to take on d4 perhaps and go d6, but this gives white too much liberty. I think with a pair of bishops, white is clearly superior side. Yeah, but we are not getting the moves in. Ah, okay, okay, now we got a bunch of them. So, yes, a capture on e5, d4, bishop b4, de5. Knight e4, and then I keep wondering what the move is. Because, no, seriously, I'm sort of confused. Is it queen g4? Like, is queen g4 possible at all? Because that is confusing. Queen g4, let's say knight takes. Queen g7. And then you can give a check. No, queen g7 is terrible. You can give a check and then move rook f8, yeah? How is that? Queen d4 perhaps is the move, or just bishop d2, no?
As I see in the game, queen f3 has been played,
queen
but
f3.
yeah, queen
could be,
g4
queen
clearly
f3.
has this attack on g7, but queen f3 attacks the knight and also guards the pawn on
Guards
c3.
the pawn on c3. Yeah, probably queen f3. So I can tell you why I'm a bit confused, because you have, you know, you basically have in this position knight f3, knight c6, knight c3, knight f6, bishop c4, knight takes e4, and it starts looking familiar, right? With the only difference that the pawn is on c7, not on c5. Otherwise, it would be just, you know, just the same with colors reversed. So here takes, and I'm 100% sure here you can play queen g5. Difference being that after queen g2, if white moves the knight, let's say knight takes a7 or knight e5 with a check, there is c6.
That's a big difference.
There is a c6 move, and then black almost wins. Right. While in our case, the pawn already kind of moved from c2, so in this line there will be no c2, c3 for white, and therefore this line cannot be played at all. All right. There is that, and now the bishop's hanging. I'm trying to recall what's the actual move here is. Is it bishop to a5? Is it bishop what? Bishop e7? So I'm guessing you can play bishop a5 because, yeah, c3 is hanging. So the only question is, like, after queen g3, can you castle? Because that's, of course, would be ideal move, just to castle short. Yeah, you probably can, right? You just castle, bishop h6, you can take on c3, I'm guessing. Just bishop c3. Now,
then,
if you take black takes. Okay, that's sharp, right? So black is a pawn up, but the king is quite weak. Right?
It's a bit confusing for both sides. The pawn structure is not so good looking for none of the colors.
Yes, I guess it's bishop a5, but I cannot be 100% sure, because I remember even. Once again, it might be, you know, this kind of false memory when it actually happens from absolutely different line, and I just don't recall. But yeah, queen to g3 castles, bishop h6. If nothing better, I can actually play g6, it would seem. And white is an exchange up, I understand, but those are like some weaknesses. Maybe black gets some sort of a counterplay. Maybe not. I don't know. Bishop e2, castle quickly. Yeah, maybe white's just better. Right, we'll find out. Yeah, bishop a5 is on the board from Kacharava, and yeah, the game continues. Already kind of an interesting opening, that one is.
It is, yeah, it is interesting, and we don't have these well-known lines that we do know that in after 10 moves or 20 moves it will be so equal position that game will just continue for next 2 hours before the time control, and then when all the action is gonna start. Let's take now a look at the second board.
Yeah, let's check like top boards in in both events. We move to board 2. It's Yosipenko against Ivic, and here, oh well, one could think, like not looking at Black's king side, you would think it's some sort of a Catalan, right, with the dc4 and then white playing e4. But in fact, Black has the bishop on g7, so it's a Grunfeld defense. So Black's attempt to play the Grunfeld defense, and white going g3, bishop g2, c6 and d5, so-called symmetrical Grunfeld, and that is known to be very, very solid for Black. And what's interesting, Yosipenko went for knight c3, which honestly back then was considered to be not good. People would say, okay, Black captures the pawn on c4 and has a chance to keep it. And that's indeed the case, because next move is e4. But apparently he has everything analyzed. Yosipenko has everything analyzed, and he will show us what, in fact, is the compensation for a pawn sacrifice. For those of you who were wondering what happens after knight e5, because that's one of the standards way of to regain the c4 pawn. Well, in this case, Black has bishop e6 as well, but the best is knight g4. Unlike in the Catalan, you don't have this idea in the Catalan, right? Because your pawn is on e6, bishop is on e7. So in the Catalan, white very often, by playing knight e5, white very often wins back the c4 pawn. Here, knight g4, and Black is just a pawn up, because if you take, Black captures on d4, I think with the queen. Maybe you do get some compensation, but certainly not enough. Okay, so what ended up happening in the game, white plays e4, which is quite logical, building up a strong center, and then in a Catalan manner, playing queen to e2 and putting the rook on d1. Yeah, by the way, Black's a5 is also quite clever, I guess, kind of securing himself from a2, a4 break, because now a4 is a little bit too early, right? Black will just play b4, kick the knight away, and then after bishop a6, white's queen and rook very nicely line up on this diagonal for a Black bishop, right?
It is interesting because right now I can see the games in our online database, and at this point no one has played a5.
Yes,
but there has
a novelty, but it's a clever
lot
move.
of moves like bishop g4, knight d7, bishop e7, a6, b4, knight a6, knight f to d7, and a5 looks to me also quite tempting. Even now, without white's reaction on the queen side, Black can play bishop a6. And just to push
just kind of
b4 right
d4.
away, yes, without even a4 move.
So rook to d1, once again, pretty standard. So now the difference is if you say play b4 too early, knight, of course, will go to a4, right? And that's exactly the square that is taken by white pawn in this line. So it's a strange balance there on the queen side. Like Black doesn't want to push b4 by himself, and white doesn't want to rush with a2, a4. So Black plays knight to d7. And the big question, of course, would be what happens after d4, d5, right? So white similarly sets it up for d4, d5 break.
Right. d5 here, for instance, he takes d5. And now white can take with the pawn or push e5 and take the pawn with
e5 is quite interesting, right?
Yeah.
e5 is quite interesting, and then I'm not sure if Black is in time for everything. It really depends, let's say, on this line's evaluation. If Black just goes bishop a6, takes on f6, knight f6. So if you cannot take on d5 immediately or apply like huge pressure on d5 immediately, maybe Black is just fine with 3 pawns against the piece, right? So Black missing maybe a couple of moves like e6 and move the queen so that bishop g5 is not a pin, but it's white to move, and apparently white has something. So I would suspect Yosipenko has all this stuff analyzed.
Yeah, and it is his time now to move. But we do have on the third board a very interesting opening for our viewers, which is Jobava London system, and that is exactly what Samunenko have chosen to against Frederick Svane.
Jabava London system, which was invented by Veresov perhaps some 60 years before Jabava was born. Yeah, but that's modern naming of openings for you guys. Right, so knight to c3, d5, bishop f4. e6, and knight b5 quickly. That's a funny thing. Yeah, so, well, actually, even e6 is perhaps slightly inaccurate. I mean, some people would consider e6 to be slightly inaccurate, specifically because of knight b5, and then you have to make like some awkward move. Either give a check to play bishop a5 to protect c7, right? But then, as far as I understand, it's c3, bishop a5, and I guess queen a4 to force the knight. Ah, no, yeah, right? No, no, yes, yes, no. No, I was thinking you pretty much force knight c6, right? Because
I can't play c6.
c6, check on d6, I guess white's better, so perhaps like force the knight to c6 and then just try to say, okay, all the stuff returns back, okay, this knight will have to go to a3, right? But yeah, then you have the knight on c6 and the bishop kind of a little bit offside on a5. But once again, I'm no expert. Maybe white actually has to do something else. Like actually, a4 makes a lot of sense. a4, b4, you know, or b4 to start with, a4 and so on. So that's one line for black. The other one was played in the game, which is knight a6. But then the knight is awkward on e6.
Yeah. First of all, what I know here with this position, I know e6, as you mentioned, is a bit of accuracy, and it's better to avoid knight b5 with any means to play a6 here. There's also move c6, or you can just change it and go g6 lineups here, setups. But when you play e6 and white gets the knight on b5, which is correct here.
Yeah, let me see. E6, knight b5.
Knight b5. Yeah. Knight a6 seems to be here more accurate move, because then you want to push c6 and to control the c7 square. Here e3 has
bishop
played.
e7, knight f3, knight h5. Yeah, I wonder if knight f3 is
yeah, I think it's something else here. It's something else.
Because this way, it would seem white... okay, white's achievement is the fact that the knight's on a6, where it's totally misplaced. But the black gets a chance to trade the dark square bishop. And overall, the knight on c3 is not, the knight on c3 is not great. I'm guessing black has to have a very decent position. And both players seem to be thinking at the very early stage. It's like move 9 and nobody, at least nobody is blitzing moves out. So, well, it could be that the position is familiar, but not you know, not like when they say, like, you know by heart and you just like blitz out, basically. Which Jobava would do, probably. And next 10 moves as well in this position. Or maybe he would not reach this position, maybe he would go for something else.
He likes these positions.
Yeah,
I played
G7.
several times at Abu Dhabi Masters, and he was also playing there. And after each game, he was telling me how to play more, like better here with white, and what type of game is this in different positions. So he really loves it. He really, really loves it. And when he talks, he's he shows a lot of interest in this opening.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's the current situation, and perhaps it's a clever decision by Igor Samunenko to choose something not mainstream against his opponent, who seems to be extremely well prepared. Yeah, we had Frederick Swane in the studio the other day, and he was basically telling, right, I mean, I knew this game, whatever, till move 23, and so on and so on, so he's a monster when it comes to preparation of like mainstream forced lines. So maybe that's a clever choice by Samonenkov, but yeah, only time will tell.
Oh, just I was so curious actually. I'm always mixing these lines and never understood how to play correctly. So this is another time that I mixed. And after e6, in fact, here white goes with e3, and white can wait for a bit for black to push c5, because when you play e3 and c5, which challenge the center right away. Now knight b5.
No, I mean, of course, now
is
knight
super
b5.
Strong because
The
knight
knight
a6,
will never leave.
Yeah, knight is never leaving from here, and white has here very nice.
Yeah, but
position.
black will not play c5 then. Black will play something like along the lines of bishop d6, or even some people were playing a6 followed up by c5, knight
yeah,
c6.
that's the whole theory here. But what we have here in the position in the exact game, I believe here white is just fine. Like the knight is kicked back here. White's bishop is also challenged on g3, can be traded at any moment, and black is controlling all the weak squares here on the board.
Okay, but still you have to make moves, right? Because I'm honestly not sure about black's very next move. Like what to play. You do not want to capture on g3 too early, right?
No.
Because then the h1 rook all of a sudden plays from the initial square. And also your knight on a6 is fairly misplaced, right? So potentially, either you go for e5 break in the center, or you try to build some sort of stone wall with f5, right? Anyway, knight is much better on this route, like d7, covering e5, or later on going f6 to f6 and e4. And same applies for e5, right? So the knight on e6 is, if we think of it, look, white went knight b5 and was forced to go back, right? Black spent this 2 tempi for playing knight to a6 and c7, c6. And while c7, c6 is almost certainly not a bad move, it might prove to be kind of not a good move if you later on decide to push c6, c5, then you just kind of wasted the tempo. But not worse than that. But knight a6 might prove to be counterproductive, so that you'll have to go to d7 by returning back, going to d7. So I think that's the whole point to white's play, because something similar happened to... Okay, I was not involved in the game, but was witnessing the game, where black ended up playing the stonewall dodge with f5, and I think somehow dark square bishop was still on the board. Black ended up playing stonewall dodge, and kind of not being ready to admit that the knight on a6 is bad, he went to c7, and it turned out that like he would be better off with the knight on b8, because say knight on c7 doesn't do anything, it actually is kind of on the way.
Well, in
other
these
pieces.
structures, white in these stonewall structures, white controls e5 square, and knight is the piece which
yeah, you are
controls
trying to
it, and from
trying
c7 that's
to
illegal
fight, yeah.
to fight for e5 square. Well, after this you ask what is black's response here. How about just castle instead of taking on g3?
Yeah, castle here. That's all right, and then I'm not sure if we... Yeah, that would be very tempting, to be honest, to try to capture this.
Well, if you capture...
but
I was
then-
anyway struggling with the knight on a6.
Yeah, I agree. So that's like, I want to keep this capture in mind and then kind of going for the c5 square quickly. But yeah, but capturing immediately is probably not such a great idea. How about playing something like this, strangely? Yeah, I really want to force black to provoke to capture the capture on g3, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, but probably you can still insist on keeping the tension for now and just go g6. Yeah, maybe that's the move. Yeah, perhaps that's the move. Just castle short and see what happens, so to speak. So white can try to play kind of waiting strategy to go a3 to stop b4. Sorry, to stop knight b4 or bishop b4 in some cases, and wait for black to kind of make up his mind. One thing to mention that knight c7 or knight b8 here is a bit of an oversight, because white's going to play g4 after exchanging the bishop and win a piece. But yeah, but I believe you do have more useful moves with black, and eventually, okay, the king is castled, but still maybe you just take at some point, get f5 or g6. The position is satisfactory. Right. Okay. So that's an interesting
I would
game.
like to suggest now another game,
Sure.
very much looking alike like this one. It looks very much like a London system in the girls section, board 2, one of the leaders.
All
board.
right, so let's switch.
So here we have Salimova against Ruzinska.
Okay. But that's a kind of real London system with the knight on g2.
Yeah,
right?
true London system.
Even though it wasn't that. I'm still confusing those names. Is it Kolle? No, Kolle is e3, right? This is, I don't remember the name of this one, if I'm perfectly honest. So London system is pretty much anything with bishop f4 and not knight c3, right? Then bishop g5 on the second move is Trompovsky attack, but what's the name for this one?
I see Torre attack.
Torre attack, yeah, that should be it. That should be it. Anyway, h6, bishop to h4, c5, e3, knight c6, c3. So black acts pretty much as he would in the London. Knight d2, bishop d3, castles. Something's off here. I'm not sure what, but okay, castles. Can white somehow postpone? I mean, the first instinct is to postpone the castle for white. Like black has already castled. He committed to h7, h6. Very tempted to say that in some positions, like marching the g pawn forward, opening files and attacking the king is, well, something I'd like to make work. So the only question is, how do I make it work? So the move could be queen e2. Queen c2 is kind of less reliable. There's probably nothing wrong with castle, but then you are not playing for an advantage, I would think. The queen e2 intended to play e4. Who knows? Maybe even e4 at once. Like, how bad is e3, e4 at once? Yeah, computer likes black in this case, but we shall see. Maybe white doesn't have to go crazy. Maybe just play queen e2. Or even, you know, takes on c5 and then queen e2 and opt for e3, e4. Also might be an idea. So one more time. What was that? Bishop to d6, bishop d3, and castles. Trying to recall. Yeah. So once again, like in Trompovsky attack, when they play bishop g5 and if black goes e6, among other things, you can still go knight f3 and transpose to our line, yeah. But there is a say e4, and then after h6, you kind of have to take on f6, queen f6, and play this position. So I was thinking, if white could do the same in our game, but the thing is, next move for white is not knight f3. If we are speaking about Trompovsky theory, I think it's either knight c3 or queen d2 immediately. Right, and in our game we had this position, so if you'd take go e4, I mean, probably nothing wrong, but somewhat imprecise move, because in Trompovsky you're actually looking to play f4 first and then knight f3. Right, anyway, quite an interesting, I wouldn't say intriguing position just yet. I mean, it's very, you're absolutely right, it's very similar to London system setups. And white was not on time with the usual trick from Tore attack. I mean, if, let's say, if this trick works for white, the positional trick, then white's much better. It's knight e5 and then to support it with f4, right? But somehow black is careful enough to put the bishop on d6, not on e7, so white doesn't have this possibility.
Yeah, that's right. Now, oh, she just made
she
a
takes,
move.
yeah, she takes on c5. Yes, exactly. Takes on c5, bishop c5, and I wonder if it's e4 immediately or one more preparation move like queen e2 or something.
So yeah, after d takes c5, bishop takes c5, and e4 what is really here white's idea, for instance, when black takes the pawn on e4, knight takes c4.
Yeah, probably knight. I mean, you can technically take with the bishop, it also might be interesting, but it really depends if g5 works or doesn't, right? But yeah, let's
to take with the bishop, it's a bit like not natural looking, because usually you don't like to give up the first bishop.
It's not that natural.
And now what happens if black plays bishop e7?
Bishop e7, and then, I don't know. I mean, you can trade everything and just go queen e2, right? You can try to say, for now I don't want to trade anything, I just go queen e2 immediately. But then perhaps black can just take knight e4, bishop e4, bishop e7, queen e7. If white takes with the queen, I guess f5 should work because white's king is still in the center. So, I mean, f5 and e5, yeah, of course. Not just play f5, create yourself a weakness and wait, but f5, e5. So perhaps white takes with the bishop, and this one's tricky. This one's tricky. I mean, might be better for white, this one. After all, it's no longer any of this Colle or Tore systems. It's more of a, no, seriously, I mean, it's more of a structure from the French defense, right? The knight d2 French.
No more Tore.
Yeah. Tore attack and Tari attack. Do we know anything about that? Tari attack.
No.
Arian Tari. I mean, he has to come up with an attack, and we'll call it.
Okay.
We will
I thought
call
there
it
was
this.
already Tari attack.
Maybe there is, but we just don't know the moves.
Yeah, we don't know it yet. On the first board, we do have here two leaders facing each other. Also, a very important match between these two. The winner of the match will be the sole leader. If they draw, then others can have a chance to catch up. And here we have a Sicilian defense structures.
Yeah, it's interesting that others include Salimova only. When you say others can catch up, but in fact,
if S was extra there, I apologize.
No. I mean, it's just that usually it's exactly the case. Like, it's a race and you always have to keep winning the games because otherwise like a bunch of people catch you up. But now there is quite a difference, right? So it's only if Salimova wins, it becomes three-way tie. It's a strange opening, I want to say. So d6, I mean, nothing strange so far. A check on b5 and knight d7 by some, I don't know, agreement, I want to say, between strong players is considered to be the main response to this check. I still have no clue whatsoever what's wrong with bishop d7, but Nobody seemed to be playing it. Castles a6 and bishop d7. Yeah, speaking of castles, was it Yesipenko to play bishop a4? I think it was him, right? After castles a6, you can also play bishop d3, right? I think that used to be one of the lines as well. Bishop takes d7 is... I don't even know. I mean, it's an attempt to play the kind of normal Sicilian, but just trade the bishop away. Queen d3, e5, knight b3, rook to c8. So white isn't on time to set up c4, knight c3, I assume. Therefore, goes for knight c3. No, but this is just a Sicilian where black got the time to trade, to trade the light square bishop. Then the next move is very, very typical of those Sicilian setups as well. It's h7, h6, because I don't know if black had to do it, but the desire to avoid bishop g5 trade and white seizing control over d5 is sort of understandable. So h7, h6 is, well, typical move, let's call it this. Okay, a4, expanding on the queen side. But I believe black has little to worry about, to be honest. I mean, just finish the development, maybe start with bishop e6, because you have a threat, right? Start with bishop e6, then go bishop e7. I wonder if you can allow yourself to be even greedier and to play queen c7 first, so that after bishop e3, bishop e6, white would not have knight d5, right? Because now c2 pawn is hanging. Because if you start with bishop e6, I guess white's point is that he goes knight d5, and then you cannot tolerate this knight forever on d5. You'll have to trade, and that's a big question. What takes on d5, right?
You can take this one with knight in this
case.
Take
with the knight, okay, you move
withdraw
the
bishop
bishop.
d7. And here in this structure, it's like double-edged position where white goes c4, tries to go c5, and black can go like short castle and f5. So for that, you need bishop e7.
Yeah, like if it starts being about black pushing like f5 and so on, I think black's already fine. So when we enter this position with white, I guess what we're looking for is like quickly set up some problems. But
yeah, I think a5 here for black. Like black has to also set up the queen side with a5, b6 to avoid c5.
a5 could be, well, actually even f4 might be dangerous, because usually what happens is when black has... There is one more pair of knights on the board, right? Typically. And then, like, when you go f4, black gets this e5 square for his knights. And now this might be a very serious difference. The white goes f4, and... No, I'm afraid a5 is too slow, so black has to do something else, like queen to c7 maybe anyway, allow c5 and hope that it holds somehow. Anyway, that's a very sharp position after h6,
in fact,
a4.
When we looked at this position and knight d5 created already so much mess for black, this queen c7 idea makes more sense.
Yeah, queen c7 is interesting, yeah, and also you are not forced to go bishop e6. It's just that it was my attempt to kind of force matters a little bit, because bishop e6 threatens bishop c4 and so on. You are free to play bishop e7, right? Just play bishop e7, castles, and then decide if you want to go for bishop e6 or something else. So, honestly, I think not only black has equalized, but potentially it's white who has to be careful, because, two bishops is two bishops. Other than that, it's absolutely normal, traditional, I want to say, setup, structure-wise, right?
Right, yeah. It's very typical of Sicilian
Line
defense.
I think, yeah, that's more of one. Knight of setup. Once again, usually you have all 4 pairs of minor pieces on the board, so it'd be some bishop on e2, and black would have by that point bishop on e6, knight on d7, let's say. So that's what we are talking about. So it's not exactly the same, but the structure is very similar, right?
It is super similar. And this game can get somewhere very interesting. Let's take a look at the third board of the girls section.
So on board 3, we have Hajieva from another player from Azerbaijan. So it's interesting, you know, representatives of countries on
Which
the
countries
very
are
top.
the
So
most
2 players from Azerbaijan in the
players?
leading room in the group in the girls section, and 3 players from Kazakhstan. On, like, if we are talking top 5 boards, right?
We have 1 Polish player, 1 Bulgarian, and 1 Armenian also among. And also we have 2 German players very close to top boards as well,
Yeah.
most of the time.
All right, so what's on board 3? E4, C5, C3. That's such a common line. Yeah, I think, especially if, let's say, if you ever in your life, and I'm talking to, say, our viewers or, yeah, pretty much anyone, if you've ever been considered young talent and you've played those under something age categories, there is absolutely 0 chance that you're not familiar with this line, because kids love playing C3. It's far less confusing, right? I mean, Sicilian, it means a lot of variations and this and that. Okay, I'll just play C3. And
Yeah. C3, like, I love this kind of setups, although I never had a chance to play this myself. But C3, bishop b5 in Sicilian is something that you're not going to the main lines. It's a setup, and you know what you're planning. You're fighting for the center, and then in most of the lines you fight on the king side. You attack the king. So that's why you mentioned youth championship.
Yeah,
it's
it's
so
very
winning
popular
strategy.
It's very popular. Right, once again, not to mention that probably should not bring any advantage if black knows what to do. And okay, and that's actually the move white played here. That's what, move move 8, bishop b3 is a very, very unpleasant move. I mean, first of all, black's not forced to play knight b6. He can go e6. Right, but that's a different line. So let's assume knight b6 was prepared. The main line would go bishop to b5, d takes, knight takes, bishop d7, and so on and so forth. It's actually a very longish theory. I don't know if something has changed since last time I checked it. It was considered to be holdable for black without much effort. Okay, there are some other moves. Anyway, so that's bishop b5. But after bishop b3, that's actually quite an annoying line, because it always feels that, come on, this is kind of, this gambit is unsound, it will never happen. But when it actually happens in your game, you regret not checking it at home.
Yeah.
Bishop b3. And some people even play d6, d5 just to avoid all the sharpness. And by the way, if white knows what to do here, it's a very funny move white usually plays in this position. It's knight to h4. So once again, I mean, you picked up chess, you're learning stuff, right? You learn those advices from grandmasters. Develop, take a center, do not move the piece for the second time, right? Castle your king, and so on. And then I'm telling you that kind of the only way to fight for an advantage with white is actually to go knight h4, right? Because otherwise black gets to develop the c8 bishop, and after knight h4, if black goes e6, you actually just go back. So you wasted 2 tempi. Chess is a very hard game to figure it out. So that's the bottom line. Anyway, after bishop b3, black takes on e5, And the whole point is that white was not ever planning to play the endgame, but white goes d5, knight a5, and knight to c3 to protect the d5 pawn. So white sacrifices the pawn this way, but disrupts black's development, right? And also develops his pieces in a very, very fast way. g6. Okay, g6 is possible, but I'm not sure if it's the main line. Again, I don't really remember let's say what the theory is, but I'm guessing it was considered to be playable.
Yeah, this game
like
made
f7,
me think.
f6, you know, f6 and so on. But then how do you play f6 if you don't know anything,
Yeah,
right?
no,
I mean,
no.
it's clear that it might be the best move, but you're taking enormous strategic risk or whatever, tactical risk, just not to go out from the opening, right?
Yeah, this game made me remember, and what you also mentioned, that you don't look these openings that very often.
Yeah,
it's not like
absolutely.
one of the mainstream, of course, but when your opponent plays it,
It's so annoying.
you are like, oh, I wish
This
I
line
wish
again,
I
I
knew
mean,
it.
This line again. No, but I've taken it even further than this, that somebody would play a line against me, which I'm annoyed with, and I would be cursing myself during the game. But later on, I'm thinking, okay, it's a sideline anyway, so I already got it played against me. When's going to be the next time?
Next
I
one,
don't know.
yeah.
I mean, in half a year, maybe in 1 year, so I don't care. I will not look it up. And then it happens again.
Yeah.
Bishop
All the
f4,
time.
castles. So one would say black has pair of bishops, like he finished the development, right, and so on. But white has a huge space advantage, right? And white, I mean, it's absolutely clear what white's going to be doing next. I can suggest a couple of moves for white. If you let me play rook d1 and rook e1, I'll be very happy. So black really struggles with finding basically space for the pieces. So I guess this has to be better for white, at least, in a practical sense, much easier to play with white. I mean, I understand what white's supposed to be doing. Like you go rook d1, you go rook e1, then you have a chance to pressure on e7. You are looking for a proper moment to just break with d5, d6. And for black's position is kind of a balancing act, right? So you have to develop,
it's not
and
any
not
like
very
weakness
comfortable,
here
right?
for black, but black's pieces are kind of not very connected like white's pieces. They are towards the center, and there is a serious problem of this light square bishop.
Yeah, like the bishop, it's not clear where it goes, right?
Right. What I would do here in this type of position is that I would look for the ways how to trade at least knights. So when there are like less pieces on the board, then my pieces will be more free to move around.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think if e6 is an actual move. I mean, is it possible that e6 is the move to play? Of course, black will be happy to trade. I mean, this way, ideally, d6, bishop e6, or even after rook a d1, even to take on d5. Yes, white gets the development advantage, but anyway, like you trade the center and you'll find squares for your pieces. The real problem is d6, right? The real problem is d6, and then it goes about this d6 pawn if it's an asset or a liability. So it's a strong passed pawn for now, but maybe black somehow will be able to surround it. So I don't think e6 is, castle's already played. Don't think e6 is the move right here, but maybe black should be looking towards this possibility. And the best thing about this opening, it's, as we already mentioned, it probably caught Kamalidenova absolutely off guard. So she has spent 40 minutes, 45 minutes up to this point, while Hajieva practically did not spend any time. So, clever
Very
choice.
nice choice of the opening from
Clever
white.
choice. So boards, yeah, let's kind of quickly jump from board to board to see if there is anything like super sharp going on. Not really. That's board 4. That's board 5. Well, board 5, interestingly, it's just a theoretical position. After 1 hour of play and no big surprises after, well, 7 moves played only. Board 6. This one, I don't even know, some French. No, but what happens today? Look, again, black is well prepared on 1 hour 31, white is down to 41 minutes.
That's right.
So a lot of stuff like this, right?
Yeah. If we are looking for some changes, we can go back in the open section when we have on the first board and second board a little bit different structure.
Okay, so it did develop quite a bit, right? So board 1, yeah, board 1, we've seen this, bishop to f4. Okay, that's exactly the line, right? Castles, bishop e2, queen e7, and castle short. Black goes d6, they trade, and rook a to d1. All right, so whose pawns are weaker, right? That's the question. The white pawns are not great, but black's d6 arguably is even weaker. Yeah, I'm wondering if queen e7 was... Because black spends quite a lot of time, right? If queen e7 was such a... If it was a precise move. So d6 is hanging, black is not in time to protect it with the bishop, but I mean, bishop c7 looks so bad. I mean, bishop c7 looks so bad.
Yeah, just checking right now, d6 is the first line of the engine, which I have the access, not the strongest engine indeed, but to make such a move like d6 and to weaken the pawn is not easy decision. So I kind of think that both players have seen already this position earlier.
You mean d6 the moment he played it, or
I mean,
d6
this is one of the main line of the engine.
Okay. But what do we do next with the d6 pawn?
Let's ask the engine.
Yes.
It says rook e8.
Rook e8 to attack this guy, yeah, thought so. And then after bishop d3, the pawn is... Well, actually, the pawn is not hanging because I'm also threatening bishop d6, right?
Yeah, g6 is a suggestion here. But I'm not sure with this. It's really
that's tricky, right? That's tricky.
Dark squares. Unless you take c3 pawn very, very quickly and you play bishop g7 and you just get extra pawn.
I mean, you probably could do this, unless I'm... Like,
no, bishop h7, queen a5 is hanging. Ah.
I mean,
then bishop...
this, queen h5 and queen a5, right?
No, then f4 bishop is hanging.
Yeah, the bishop on f4 is hanging. And you could play this immediately without playing bishop h7, right? Where I'll be forced to play g6, but still I guess that's acceptable for black. Even if I lose the d6 pawn now, at least the king is not weak. And yeah, imagine you take it, we trade the queens, and black plays some bishop e6, rook c8, black should be fine. So white has some slight initiative, perhaps because of better development and so on, but black should be fine. So I won't be surprised if eventually it will be a draw. And you said board 2 as well, right? There's some development. Oh, okay, yeah, there is. So rook to d1, knight d7. Spenko has played e5. e5, knight to d5, and e6. Knight here, captured here, knight e5. Black perhaps had no other choice but to take the knight with the bishop. Pawn takes, bishop f5, and knight e4. So black is a pawn up, but I guess it's a very, very risky position for black. Well, speaking from my Catalan experience, like yes, black has two extra pawns on the queen side, right? But to start kind of moving it forward to be able to make use of those pawns. I mean, your first task is not to get checkmated, and that's challenging. That's challenging to do.
Task.
Yeah, that's challenging to do because you've also traded the dark square bishop. It's not to be confused with the Catalan, of course, because in the Catalan, as I keep saying, it's the pawn on e6, and therefore the bishop is somewhere on c8 so here. Bishop on f5 is in fact very active. The moment this knight leaves, there's always going to be bishop f5 to d3. So it's a little bit different. It's not necessarily...
Well, is that threat right now e6? Like if you play rook f8?
Irrelevant.
Yeah,
right?
let's make
a4,
it.
yeah, e6, and then if...
Rook moves on f8 or g7, there's bishop h6. I'm getting more and more pieces on the in the center, and if queen gets also on d4 square, that's gonna be checkmate.
That'd be a question. I mean, how bad is for me to take? Let's say go here and to take on f7. Yeah, realistically, it's an exchange for 2 pawns, but white doesn't have any bad pieces, and the king is really weak, right? And if you play bishop d3, even if I take, I have like
two
huge
bishops,
compensation.
it's very nice position.
So yeah, e6 could be considered a threat. But anyway, I mean, it's clear that it's not a4 what black's planning, right? Queen to c8 could be an option, like preparing bishop g4, bishop h3 in some cases, well, at least stopping e6, right? What else to consider with black is somewhat counterintuitive capture on e4. So bishop e4, let's say, and then just play e6, and you do create yourself kind of holes on the dark squares, but white doesn't have the knight anymore, right? So all that, it's kind of annoying when you have another pair of minor pieces with basically black's bishop on, on c8 and white knight somewhere, and then this knight gets to all the juicy squares. But here, yeah, like bishop e4 is actually quite an interesting alternative to calm play. So, well, I'd be worried.
Yeah,
I'd be worried for
Yasipenko is having a little bit difficult position.
He has difficult tournament, to be honest, because
and his opponent is not someone that he can joke with. Very interesting game, Miro. We do have on the board 6.
Actually, we'll just mention that indeed the bishop takes e6, bishop takes e4 was played. Right, board 6, it's Batsuren, right?
Yes, Gadimbaili. We have
Batsuren and Gadimbaili. Okay, people still play this.
Yeah, this opening is so crazy and also the position. But I do had this experience. I was commentating with Vishy Anand. I was seeing this for the first time, and he was very serious about this position, and he's like, yes, this is this move. But for us, for me, for instance, this kind of moves like bishop f4, e5 is something that you need at least a few seconds to understand why e5 here and why all these crazy moves.
Yeah. Remember, it's Grand Prix, right? That were in FIDE Grand Prix. There were 2 games against the same player, I believe. So Levon Aronian was white in both cases, and he won a game against Dominguez, and then the next Grand Prix, or the one after that, maybe the last Grand Prix, he won a game against Hikaru as well. So I was kind of shocked that you would voluntarily go for this line with black, but it turns out some people still do.
Yeah, to speak a little bit about this.
About those moves? No, we
Let's
better
say-
don't start. I mean,
Let's
okay.
say about a5, what I remember is that, not here, just...
Okay, yeah, 95. I mean, first of all, like queen b6 looks ridiculous, but otherwise, how do you
does.
guard the b5 pawn? Yeah, a6 still allows me to take. Okay, so queen to b6, 95, queen b7, bishop f4, threatening this, and you need at least some counterplay. So that's why you play e5, bishop e5, knight d7, so that now you have a check on b4, right?
That's
You
right. You
unblock
need
the
this
bishop.
bishop to have a chance to develop in one move on b4 with a check.
So for instance, knight c7 would be quite naive, right? King d8. I mean, knight c7 is kind of fine, but then you can't really take the rook because then bishop b4 happens and it's black who wins. You don't want to be blocking with the queen, and even less so you want to play king e2, queen takes e4, because it's a checkmate, interestingly. All right. No, but seriously, I mean, that's the problem with this line. You kind of skip the moves on fast forward and believe that players know what they're doing, because, and your other option is to try to figure out each move on your own, which is not easy at all. So knight to d7, yeah, hits the bishop, bishop goes to f4. After knight d7, black has no way of protecting c7 whatsoever. I mean, he could have hoped for knight a6, but then, yeah, this knight usually is taken, and then the follow-up is knight c7. So knight d7 just to win a tempo, knight f6, pretty much forcing white to capture the exchange. It's a check, king goes, knight takes a8. Black captures on e4, knight e2, and captures the knight on a8. Knight to c3, bishop e4, f3, knight d5, bishop d2, all that I believe.
Yeah, also this f3 move was extremely hard for me to understand why to play this
Why
move.
f3? I mean, you probably want to move your king away from the center, right?
And in, I think in Aronian, what
Can't
Aronian
play
did
queen e2
is...
because queen takes.
What Aronian did was also he played king on
sorry.
f2. So this is also some kind of square that king can go after check.
I guess this position happened in both of his games, and then he was the one to choose different approaches, one against Dominguez, the other one against Hikaru. But I might be mistaken. I mean, it's certainly that in both games they had this position, right?
Yeah.
They had this position in both games. But then, yeah, it might have been something different. Anyway, bishop c3, white is thinking right here. Bit of a surprise. Yeah, well, technically bishop takes c3 might be an alternative. Just kind of try to force black, attempt to force black to take on c3. But seriously, and look, I mean, move 16, and Gadinbaili has spent 43 minutes. Sorry, he has 43 minutes left, so he spent, in fact, roughly the same amount. So what I'm trying to say, I mean, I really don't understand why would you play this line. I mean, what's the motivation?
Yeah, I also asked him why he plays the opening
French,
where he
yeah.
sacrificed a piece and went to the end game, and that he had to defense. And he was very precise in his answer, and he said, like, I knew it was equal, and I knew how to equalize it.
Yeah, but I'm talking about a little bit different thing. So, as far as I understand, you build your opening repertoire with some sort of specific demand. Okay, I play this opening in order to have chances to play for a win, right? Or I play this because it's rock solid. And kind of here, you play Queen's Gambit accepted, which is like not the sharpest thing in the world if white wants it, right? Let's say I want to make a draw against you, I'll go knight f3, knight f6, e3, The moment you take c5, you go c5, I'll take on c5, and we'll play this boring symmetrical position. So you're not getting the fight with black if white doesn't want it. So after e4, what I'm trying to say that after e4, there are, well, according to what I know, there are reliable ways of pretty much equalize with black. So why would you go for this crazy line when you take enormous amount of risk? Because I'm yet to see any game won by black in this line. I've seen quite a few won by white, and a couple of them we've mentioned over here. So yes, optically, when I've seen it for the first time, optically it looks very nice. And if there is someone who knows me as the commentator, you probably know, guys, that I love exchange sacrifices, but here it seems to be kind of pushing your luck a bit too much. All right, I mean, that's exactly the point of my rant, so that if he knows exactly, then why would he spend so much time, right? Because it's white who blitzes, moves out, right? Yeah, it's white who has 1 hour 17. And otherwise, why would you enter such a sharp line? Okay, so black traded on c3, went a6. White's task is just to, finish the development, and then we'll see. So we do understand it's, well, there is, how to say, positional ground to what black is doing, right? It's a pawn for an exchange. It's a very nice outpost for a knight on d5. But the king on d8 is kind of not safe, right? Let's say white goes bishop e2, and if castling with the king from d8 would be a legal move, then I'd say that, yeah, that black would be doing great, but not with the king on d8, at least. Doesn't seem to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's a very, very exciting position to play, nevertheless, and we'll see how it develops, right?
We're gonna see indeed how this gonna go forward. And what game we can see right now is board 4, Kozakovsky against Mendonca.
Mendonca, yeah.
So here we have this endgame. Endgame, they swap all the pieces of the board very fast.
That's again the c3 thing. I guess, yeah, we probably should mention that both Kozakovsky and Mendonca, I think they can be considered like, if not the favorites, but very high up there. Mendonca, for instance, 25-58, right? 25-58, so one of the top seeds. It just they both had kind of a little bit slower start of the tournament, and they were not featured in the top matches up till now. Right, so c3 Sicilian, that's what people play nowadays, it turns out. Bishop to c4, good old bishop c4 line, bishop f3, and this is confusing. Again, have to confess, I do not know much about this line. Bishop f3, I mean, why a post here? I remember somewhere they do take with the pawn, oddly enough, but apparently not here. Like, point being, like, you take with the pawn, the queen goes, and then you, take on c5, go queen b3,
yeah,
try to end it up with castle long, yeah, basically. But not in our game. So bishop f3 was answered with queen f3, queen takes, knight takes. They swap the knights as well. Black goes e6, check, king d8, bishop e3. Is it just an attempt to make a draw, I wonder? I mean, if black goes knight d5...
yeah, I think
they
just want to reach move 30 to be eligible to offer a draw, because, yeah, basically they didn't really show any...
No, I mean, black had little chance. No, wait a second. I mean, black had little chance to show any kind of, right? I mean... So
yeah, that's also the point when you choose the opening you choose. that also shows, like for instance, I know that on the move 2, black could go the other way with another chances there. So this can be too dry to play. So that's what I meant by chances.
Yeah, right. But black already kind of contributed to the sharpness of this game by playing 1c5, right? So the Sicilian, and then c3. Yeah, d5 is perhaps a bit more reliable, but knight f6, once again, probably the second move is knight f6,
Yeah,
right?
I know that
But
if you want to have more complication, you can go with knight f6.
And then if white wants to make a draw still, I mean, there are lines, so that's a problem. No, I don't think it's player with black to blame. I mean, we blame nobody, it's just that, yeah, this line...
I blame nobody, I'm happy to have early
A draw,
draws, to
yeah.
be honest. So I'm
Bishop
more than
e3.
happy.
Yeah, so what black possibly is thinking about, if there is any way to create some position where you still have chances of outplaying your opponent? Because yeah, knight d5, while it's perfectly solid to go knight d5 and trade on e3, then you practically have zero chance of winning this game. So maybe you can still attempt to, I don't know, apply some pressure on d4 somehow. Say go bishop b4, king e7, and then try to line up your rooks on the d file. Right after a3, you'd go here. This bishop goes to b6. Well, actually, this might be something. Perhaps a3 is a stupid move, and white has to do something else. But yeah, because this, for instance, is not the same opposite colors, right? So d4 pawn is weak. I mean, if it's a white who goes bishop g5 and takes, then d4 pawn is weak, and black will have, white will have to face a few unpleasant moments.
That's right.
Oops, I clicked on some game and it's actually a very interesting position there, but we will check it, I guess, a little bit later. So quickly, board 3, just to sum it up, Samonenkov and Swanner, what happens here? Looks equalish. Samonenkov spent a lot more time than his opponent. Castles, bishop e2, c5, castles, knight g3, knight c7. So black did go knight c7. That perhaps is a good timing to capture on c5 and play e4, right? To open the position up a little, while black is still somewhat underdeveloped. Roughly equal, and then we'll see what happens next.
Yeah, let's take a look now in the girls section for sport, because we have not seen the updates, and we don't have an updates on the game. But maybe if we change the video, we might have.
So what does it mean? What does it mean? Board 1.
Oh no, we have moves. It's just we don't.
We do have moves, but not a lot
Queen
of them.
C7 and A5 has been played.
No. There's been more than that, I'm guessing, because black has already castled. The bishop is rook's on d1 for sure. The bishop I don't see, perhaps on d2. So something like that. Once again, I don't know what's the moves order, but I do know what the position looks like. Castles and a5, right? For whatever reason, the bishop's on d2 and so on. Looks like that, yeah. Or, yeah, it is confusing. It's confusing. We'd better wait for, you know, for the PGM to update, because doesn't look right. I'm actually thinking it's strange to play this set of moves. Could it be that it's knight on d2, not bishop on d2? Because this at least makes some sense.
Okay, let's take a look once again at the close-up of camera. And
yeah, so take a look.
Close up of camera, please.
Yeah, but that's it. That's it.
Yeah, we got it.
That's the maximum we can get. So I just want to mention that usually in this kind of Sicilians, the knight on b3 is not great, and then if any piece should go to d2, it's probably the knight, right, on its route to f1 and then e3 and then kind of good squares. But yeah, here we do not have moves for now. On the second board, well, actually same thing. We don't have updates. Board 3, we don't have updates. Is it girls' boards or is it both factions? I think for boys, for the Open, it was updating relatively.
No,
Yeah,
we
like
have
for
it,
this
yeah.
game updates, for instance, Yesipenko's game updates, I want to say, yeah, because few moves followed, yeah, capture only 4, queen c7. So that means something with transmission in the girls section for now, so a bit of a delay, and of extra delay, so to speak, right?
Yeah, that's true. All right, let's take now our first break and let's hope that the thing's gonna be fixed because this is the first tournament. I have to admit that we're not having that bit of problems with the digital boards that usually we're facing with, and we're receiving the moves until this point, and now we're going to check that too, and we're going to take a short break and we'll be back and we're going to take a look at the middle part of the game before the time scramble. So you guys don't go anywhere, we'll be back soon. Welcome back, everyone. This is World Junior Chess Championship 2022. Here we are in Sardinia, Italy, and we're having round 8 in progress. Very close to be in the final stage of the tournament. Let's once again remind to our viewers we do have overall 11 rounds, and up to this point we still don't have any sole leader in any of these categories. We have open category and we have girls category, and today we do have in the both sections higher pointed players playing against each other, and one of these we can see right now on the board. This is girls boards.
Yeah, so right before the break we figured out there was something with moves relay, but yeah, it's got updated, so now we do have actual positions on your screen, guys. And that's the top board in the girls section. So Asel Serikbay from Kazakhstan, well, a surprise leader perhaps, right? So she's not among the top seeds, rated 2181. She has the white pieces against the other leader, Govhar Beydullaeva from Azerbaijan. Okay, so quite an original Sicilian, that is, I want to say, and yes, indeed. Remember, I was trying to figure out what were the moves looking at the camera view, and indeed it was knight to d2, not bishop to d2 here. So the knight has nothing to do on b3, therefore white starts transitioning, kind of knight to d2 to f1 to e3, and a bit of a surprise is that black reacted kind of indifferently with rook e8. So the game saw rook e8, knight f1, bishop e6, and what I'm saying that rook e8 doesn't seem to be kind of top priority for black. So perhaps one should prefer bishop e6, like knight d5 is not yet an issue because at the very end, like you take on d5 with the bishop and c2 is hanging, therefore you might as well start with bishop e6, and then after knight f1 you'll have kind of bunch of options. Bishop c4 is there, or queen c4, that's what they do very often. Or you might end up playing rook e8, but just to start with bishop e6 seems to be more appropriate. Anyway, rook e8 played, knight f1, and then black goes bishop e6, and knight e3 is very...
What's the idea really of rook e8 and not rook d8?
You should ask her. I guess she's kind of banking on the fact that eventually white will play knight d5 and you will take, and white takes with the pawn, and then rook is kind of better placed on e8. Yeah.
Okay.
So knight e3, I believe, will be the next move anyway, and then who knows? Maybe black just goes bishop f8 and prepares, you know, the usual g6 and bishop to g7 once again in case of white's knight d5. This seems to be a usual transformation, and then
so
g6
perhaps
and
she
so on.
thinks that d5 will be anyway closed by both of the whites and blacks pawns, and
Yes.
she wants to have the, because rook e8 is not something that we see very often in Sicilian pawn structure. Rook usually goes on d8, tries to push d5, but now d5 is impossible because of these two knights. So yeah, that's interesting move indeed.
Yes, after knight e3. Well, black's kind of main problem in this position that it's very hard to organize kind of real counterplay. So black is getting ready for white to play knight d5, but white is not in a hurry to do so. And if you just say, don't touch anything, play bishop f8, play g6, white might as well prepare something of that nature, like b3, and especially if bishop g7 is probably just a bad move. Bishop g7, and then some knight a4 might happen, and then that's the point. So knight to b6 and c2, c4, completely paralyzing black's counterplay in the center and on the queen side. So black should try to find some source of counterplay, and it's not that easy to do. It's not that easy to do. What's interesting, you're saying rook d8, but yeah, maybe in order to push
now
d5. But
d8,
there
rook
is
d8, I'm
also
not sure.
there is also the other idea. In such positions, sometimes they actually go for b5, a b5, queen b6, right? A b6, en passant, queen b6. Here it's impossible, or rather connected with pawn sacrifice. Maybe you can sacrifice the pawn, but you'd lose a pawn on a6. So oftentimes it's rook f goes to c8 and the other rook stays on a8. And I believe black would have been better off in this position, also having this kind of setup. But easier said than done. A rook on c8 is already there from quite a while, right? So it's not like black had that much of a choice. Anyway, position seems to be, you know, kind of balanced for the time being.
Oh, it's here black considering knight g4 kind of move?
Yeah, but again, knight to d5. Ah, you mean like knight d5, black takes.
Yeah, black takes, and maybe that's why rook to e8 has been played to guard the bishop
So
on
the
e7.
bishop is guarding. And if this knight, you'll take nevertheless, right?
Something
And
like
then
queen
there
c5
is
next.
still a pin there.
Right.
Yeah, maybe knight g4, maybe. It's not not very natural, but who knows? Well, the thing with knight g4 is that I might just play f3, you know, knight takes, bishop takes, so it kind of helps me develop. And then I'll guard c2 with rook d2, right? And eventually we'll play knight d5, so maybe that's an option. So here black probably will have to return the rook back and opt for an early f5.
Yeah, that's right. Let's now go to the game on the third board, Hajiyeva against Kamaldanova, because Kamaldanova is struggling here in this game.
Yeah.
And if things is not going on her way, she lost yesterday and she has a very tough day today.
as well.
And she's the player who has been among the leaders starting from the first round.
Yeah. So she ended up playing e7, e6, as I've mentioned, as a critical move, e6, d6, and now looking at it, I want to say the position looks familiar. In fact, it's just that, again, I'm not sure, I might be mixing things up, but quite possibly this is an actual move, and then f6. And then you try to play for, I don't know, king g7, bishop d7, and so on. So what happened in our game, black went f6 immediately, knight goes to d3, king h8 in order to play e5, f to d1, e5 and f5, yeah, e5, bishop e3, f5, and white went with f4. Something odd is going on. So black still did not fully develop, and the center kind of gets open. g5 perhaps is just too much, because after knight h5 the bishop is getting traded, then white's going to have a chance to play bishop d4. I guess it's a very, very bad position.
Oh, queen side is still not developed for black, and white has very nice attack on the king side.
Yeah. I'm not even sure what's the next move you're playing, because in order, I mean, you can try to develop, but then after knight takes, king takes, bishop d4, you have to go to the 6th rank, and that's something you don't want to be doing, right? Otherwise, you could try to say, okay, I'm preparing so that if you take, king takes, I'll at least have king h7. But this, I presume, is bad because of this capture.
Yeah.
And then if pawn takes, yeah, I guess d7 should be winning. I mean, if not, you still have like knight b5 to c7 and so on. But d7, bishop d7, this pin looks really, really dangerous. Not to computer, though. because it finds some way of protecting the bishop.
But there is an idea, right, to take like this. Of course, everything just takes a little bit of calculation, but already to have such an idea existing on the board, it's dangerous. In fact, here, Miro, after knight h5, black decided to play bishop e5
Bishop
and
e5.
save his bishop.
Computer is not very happy, let me put it mildly. How about now me taking on b6?
So here, after a takes b...
A b6, I thought d7 should win a piece, right? Bishop takes and queen d5, but what I missed is perhaps...
Bishop c3, I guess.
Bishop c3, but does it solve the issue? I'll just take back, and then queen d4 is kind of an addition to a threat, or queen e5, yeah? No, I'm guessing queen e8 could be what black has to play. Yeah, like queen e8 attacking the horsey on h5, and not much to do. Like rook e1, black takes on h5, I'm guessing. You can't take both knights, or even more than that, black can take on h2. So it's in black's favor, in fact.
Maybe I'm thinking actually at the beginning, after bishop e5,
yeah,
can we just
play d7 immediately?
Knight
d5.
Knight d5, I wanted to get rid of the knight on b6, but there is bishop e6 that I did not take into the consideration.
When it all looks super scary, so
It really
queen
does.
b5, I don't know, knight b5 after all, knight b5 just, somewhere to c7. Is bishop d4 a move? Because I mean, just swapping this bishop would be kind of cool, right?
Maybe queen d6.
Queen d6 works. Yeah, that's the problem. Queen d6 works. Okay, I mean, works as in black is not lost immediately. Maybe white.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe white is still better after something like knight b5. Right,
That's
but you want to be looking for a better move here, of course. But anyway, yeah, scary situation for Kamalidenova. She's on the verge of losing second game in a row.
Yep, and on the second board, Salimova now
Salimova
is
actually
taking
has
some good position.
Salimova actually has a very nice, very attractive position. Remember, we've seen this right after e4, this exchange bishop e7, and she actually did go for the capture on f6, queen e2, and then castle long. Once again, this looks very similar to what is called Rubinstein French, right? When you play the French defense, white goes with the knight move, either knight d2 or knight c3, and black captures d5, takes e4. You have very similar structures and quite often even the same minor pieces. Rook to f1, f4, g4, and this is something I really like a lot. Bishop c6, g5. Black is not in time to kind of cement the king side, has to take on g5, then knight takes g5, queen h5 is a threat, bishop takes, pawn takes, and it looks like a disaster, right? So the king is quite weak. Not even sure what to suggest, because g6 for one is a threat, queen h5 perhaps very... I'm not sure if it works everywhere, but queen h5 with the idea that after g6 you sacrifice also might work. But more importantly, black hardly gets any counterplay, right?
Yeah, very difficult situation for black. There's no counterplay on the queen side, and also any move to play on the king side like f6, g6, it even weakens the king more and more.
Yeah. You probably play like rook a to d8 and pray that there is no checkmate, right? But there is no guarantee whatsoever. And if, let's say, if I don't have something direct, I mean, probably g6 is very strong, but if I don't have something direct, then might as well play this little move. so that I want to play bishop c2 and not to exchange an extra
Right.
pair of rooks. So sometimes they do this. But yeah, looks really scary for black. Somehow black is not in time. Yeah, like by that point you should be either creating counter threats or trading pieces on the d file, right? None of that black was in time to organize. So quite a sharp and good position for Salimova. Then on this third board, as we said, black seems to be in quite a bit of danger. On board 4, Miriam Mekrchan and another player from Kazakhstan, Karman Galieva, I'm guessing, right? That's the name. Here it's, yeah, well, I kept an eye on this position during the break. It's like computer suggests it's equal, but you know, with opposite colored bishops, maybe we could believe that, but also a lot of other pieces on the board, so it pretty much can go anybody's way. So what's it, 2.5 hours into the round, or almost 3 hours into the round, and are there any results? Not that okay, I mean on the lower boards no, not a single result I can see in the girls section, believe it or not. How about the boys? I think in the open section, it's very likely that Yesipenko's game gonna finish in a draw. That's what I'm thinking.
Shall we take a look at the game which has been ended? That's Ido Garstein, international master against
23, move 20, sorry, board 23. Okay, white won by a huge margin. It was some, not sure how you call it, like some neo-Catalan turned Benoni turned whatever, yeah, like Benoni structure. Rook e1. Well, that's a dream position for white. Also, black has spent one extra move on nothing by playing a6. Yeah, okay. This is already like huge advantage. So queen on a3 is not doing much, and white is ready to jump with like knight d6 and then go towards the king side. So usually it kind of ends badly for black. Knight to d6, f4, queen d2, f5, yeah. Just the f5, knight f5, and everything falls apart, right? Takes on e7, takes on e8, extra exchange and a winning position.
Yep, and the other game has also ended in open section. The last board, I think very last board, Salem with the white pieces against Portu. And I was like, who won the game? Because there's no checkmate. But if we go just a little bit back, there was some funny trap. We need to go a bit back. Yeah, just about there. Look at this.
I mean,
Look at this.
What's this? Okay. Castles, queen c7, b4. So black basically overlooked. Now black actually is doing great, I suppose. Bishop takes and cd4, and it's black who is much better, but queen c7 runs into b4 and knight b5 attacking the queen, and then check and bishop e4 even. Okay, everything goes white's way. b3 c3, and he's not getting checkmated, and like wins all the material in the world, right? Bishop e4 and
resignation.
White is a rook and 2 pieces up. Well, yeah, looking at the ratings, I understand it. Those are like one of the lower rated players in this tournament, but if you compare the ratings, actually Salem, player from United Arab Emirates, he just won a game against the opponent who is 500 points
that's a
higher rated.
great
That's quite an achievement.
Yeah, it's a great achievement.
Quite an achievement there. Right, I believe we will soon have a result on one of the top boards, which is Josipenko's game against Ivic, because look at the situation on the clock, first of all, 16 minutes against 1 hour, and what Josipenko had been doing after e6 is rook f6 is met with bishop g5, rook f8 is met with bishop h6. So chasing the rook, and black perhaps doesn't want to, you know, to sacrifice an exchange or lose an exchange in this case. Black can't really take on e6 because bishop d5 pins the rook and then queen takes it. So black has to go to f8 in this situation. After rook f8 and bishop h6, that's perhaps the only moment where black can, bishop h6, that's perhaps the only moment where black can try to think of moving the rook away. But then, you know, like moves like queen f3 and so on, they are so annoying. Like rook c8 perhaps you can do, but even then, queen f3 threatening queen c7, queen f7 after knight